Hey dudes and dudettes, it's me, E.H. Ivins, and this is another edition of The Radical Reset. What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? The last time the capital of the United States was stormed was the War of 1812 by the British troops after subsequent to a battle that had taken place a short distance away where the federal U.S. troops had been routed. Now, in the past, this entire event has forced me to turn over a new leaf, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Why is because, though I have from the very beginning of this podcast, 100 and something episodes ago, said that the world was going to turn to shit and laid out the reasons why, it was at some extremely nebulous point in the future. I'm afraid that point has been reached, and so it's time to get serious. So my days of rambling through podcasts are over. I have meticulously checked in and researched what I'm going to talk about today, and I have a path to run on, which you don't see it, but is beneath the lens of the camera I'm looking into so that I don't go wandering off, unless there's a purpose to it. So in the future, you can expect that I will be more factual, less rambling unless it has a purpose, and finally with the goal in mind to bring down their government and replace it with an anti-political one, which, if you are not familiar with what antipolitism is, simply go, I'm sure you're a Prime member, go to Amazon and you can download and read it for free in the Kindle Lending Library. I do get paid every time you turn the page, and it does support this movement and podcast, but it's free to you to borrow, or you can buy it for a nominal fee, okay, either in hard copy or electronically. I personally read on a Kindle Paperwhite because I love it, but whatever makes you happy. See, that was a ramble without purpose. I already broke my rule. I'm sorry about that. So, to understand what's going on, to understand the realization that came to me, and to understand the perception different from where you're going to hear it on any other podcast, any other news show, or any other talking head. I'm going to try very, very hard not, unless I agree with the mainstream for very good reason that I'll lay out, I'm going to always try to present a third way opinion and alternative moving forward. That's my underlying purpose to all of this, in the hopes that you share this and become proselytes of the movement, and we grow this thing because we are staring into the abyss. Now, I'm going to share a story with you, and it's a personal story. Now, it's not good, it's a painful personal story, and it's not going to seem to be connected, but it is. There's a purpose to it, so just bear with me as I share this story. I shared with you, I know I've shared with you many times before, that when I grew up, my stepfather was an abuser, and I am a victim of incest, as well as physical abuse and emotional abuse. I grew up in a very abusive household. That's important to understand for the context of the story that I'm going to tell you. My first wife was I'd call her a cunt, but she was really what I came to call a zunt, which is 23 letters lower than a cunt, and it's because of this story, okay? My second wife, who I've often talked about, I adore. I am not a misogynist. I am not a hater of women. I adore women. But my first wife was a zunt, okay? And it relates to this story. We got divorced. Frankly, I had married her because I confused lust with love. 2 babies later, we got divorced, and she voluntarily surrendered full custody to me. She was off chasing another man and taking drugs and all kinds. And by the way, what killed her, she's dead now, what killed her later was a drug overdose. But we had long been apart at that point. But anyway, to make a long story short, we divorced. And several years later, she regretted giving up full custody to the kids voluntarily, but I was in no mood to share custody with her because she was up to her ass. I knew, still in addiction, even though at the time, and this is very important to the story, she was a police officer serving in the Tucson Police Department. And I had originally thought that was a great thing, by the way, when she first became an officer. She was a veteran like I was and used her veteran's preference to get hired on at the police department. And she looked great in uniform, and I thought it was going to be a great thing, but it turned out to be a nightmare for this reason. Anyway, one day I was in my office minding my own business. She had, a week or two before, asked me for shared custody. I had said no. not cruelly, just directly, and it just in a way that a person could not mistake what I meant. I never called her names or did anything. I do now, obviously, but she's dead. I mean, at the time I was trying to be civil because though I had sole custody, I never restricted her visitation. So, she was going to see the kids, talk to the kids. I didn't want to turn her into a victim and me into a villain, so I was nice to her. Okay. So to make a long story short, into my office walked two detectives from the Pima County Sheriff's Department. I lived at the time in Tucson, Arizona. And they asked me to come with them. They didn't arrest me. They asked me to come with them. They said it concerned my children. My heart stopped. I thought something horrible had happened, so I went along. Next thing I knew, I was in the Sheriff's Department offices close to downtown Tucson in an interrogation room, and it dawned on me that something was very, very wrong. She of course did it anonymously, but I found it out later. She had used her police power to reach across to the Sheriff's Department and reported me for abusing my own children. Now you can imagine how deeply that would cut to my heart, given my own background, how sensitive I am to that. And she knew it. She knew it, and she twisted the knife in my heart. But unlike a lot of people in this position, and I have heard from many, many men over the years who've been subject to unfair and false accusations of child abuse, it's become almost de rigueur in some divorce proceedings. But regardless, I was not going to be pushed around. I was at the height of my wealth and power, and I was not going to be fucked with. So they started talking to me about my children and did I want to see them and didn't I want to come clean and all kinds of bullshit and police tricks to try to get me to say something. And all I said, and this went on for nearly 3 hours, and for 3 hours, I swear to God, I just sat there with my arms folded going, lawyer, lawyer. And they would say, but sir, don't you want to see your children? Lawyer. But sir, you of course want to, be able to talk about what's good for your children? Lawyer. And this went on for hours. Finally, after 3 hours, they allowed me to call my attorney. I called her up. Her name was Barbara Fisher, actually. I think she's since passed away, God rest her soul, but her name was Barbara Fisher. And I called Barbara up on the telephone, and I told her what had happened. And less than an hour later, I was out of those offices, and my children were returned to me because they had no evidence whatsoever, just the word of a police officer on the Tucson Police Department that had turned me into the Sheriff's Department. Guess who that was? Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but let's just say I got rid of this. And as a result, the Department of Child Services, or whatever they call it, I forget what the name of the service. Anyway, the worker who had gotten involved was a Nazi. I got her fired. I had my ex-wife fired from the police department. This was to settle a massive abusive process lawsuit, by the way. How I exacted my revenge is I brought a $10 million abusive process lawsuit against Pima County, the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department, the City of Tucson, the County of Pima, I sued everybody that wasn't nailed down, and we went after them, and I told them, you can either pay me the $10 million, because it was open and shut. They'd abused process by keeping me locked in that interrogation room, not arresting me and not allowing me access to my own counsel when I repeated it over and over and over again on tape, no less, for 3 hours. Or they could fire the protective services worker and my ex-wife, which they did with prejudice so they could never be rehired and be exposed to the public again. Now, as I exacted my revenge, okay, she being my ex-wife, her name was Kim, and I only mentioned that just so I can just use her name in the story. I have nothing against the name Kim. Kim comes to me and she says, "Oh my God, can't you?" Because by the way, the other thing I did is I sued her for child support, and she wasn't making any money to begin with. And I know that sounds stupid because I was a millionaire, but in the state of Arizona, the custodial parent's entitled to child support at even a minimal level. I think I got $188.57 a month was my child support that I won, but she could almost not afford that. I had it garnished from her wages until both kids reached the age of 18, and I put it into a college savings account for them and gave it to them when they went to college. But anyway, to make a long story short, I would not relent no matter how much she begged me. And she asked me why, and I said, because Kim, and this is the point of this entire story, I said, Kim, up to this point, I thought you were merely self-destructive and stupid, but now I know you're evil. And I am not going to give in to evil. And evil is only suppressed when it understands that don't fuck with me because I'll make your life hard, you motherfucker you. Okay, now, You can tell that I got right into that, didn't you? You see what I'm like when I'm, well, anyway. Fast forward to today. The reason I told you that entire story was, up until this point, like I think millions of Americans, I thought Donald Trump was flawed. Okay, obviously. He had defects of character. He had defects in the dealing. I mean, a lot of things, but I would, and you know this from past podcasts, I would give credit where credit's due. I credited him with, tax reduction, regulation reduction, the improvement, his number one achievement of his administration, I should say. I'm no longer going to credit him. Shit, that motherfucker. Is the Middle East and settling things down between Israel and their Arab neighbors and bringing in good relations. But that was when I thought he was merely stupid, self-centered, narcissistic. Now I think he's evil. The motherfucker is evil. The motherfucker holds a rally.
Who hides evidence? Criminals hide evidence, not honest people. So, over the next 10 days, we get to see the machines that are crooked, the ballots that are fraudulent, and if we're wrong, we will be made fools of. But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail. So, let's have trial by combat.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country. Our country has been under siege for a long time.
We are gathered at a time when democracy is in crisis. Recent polling shows that 39% of Americans believe the election that just occurred, quote, was rigged. You may not agree with that assessment, but it is nonetheless a reality for nearly half the country.
Madam Speaker, I have constituents outside this building right now. I promised my voters to be their voice. In this branch of government, which I now serve, it is my separate but equal obligation to weigh in on this election and object. Are we not a government of, by, and for the people? They know that this election is not right, and as their representative, I am sent here to represent them. I will not allow the people to be ignored. Madam Speaker, it is my duty under the U.S. Constitution to object to the counting of the electoral votes of the state of Arizona. The members who stand here today and accept the results of this concentrated, coordinated, partisan effort by Democrats, where every fraudulent vote cancels out the vote of an honest America, has sided with the extremist left. The United States Congress needs to make an informed decision, and that starts with this objection.
He gets a bunch of people worked up, and Donald Trump supporters divide into two ranks, those who are true believers and those who have now abandoned him, who were like me, and I was never a supporter, but I at least understood that he had done some good things, and a lot of people held their noses and voted for him anyway, but we're way past that now. This motherfucker, can you imagine? Can you imagine if we didn't have a government with a legislative and executive and judicial branch and checks and balances and a military that is beholden to the people and not the president? Can you imagine how bad this could have been without the Constitution of the United States to protect us? Trump is a Hitlerian rabble-rouser, okay? And I know that it is cheap and easy to compare somebody with Adolf Hitler, but this is the very psychology of what gave us a Hitler. You know, I say this as someone who grew up with emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. It scars you deeply. And I would bet a lot of money that Donald Trump's childhood and Adolf Hitler's childhood were hard. Hard. Some kind of abuse was taking place, maybe all three kinds, maybe 2 out of 3, maybe 1 out of 3, but I know that they were fucked up as children. But that's an excuse because, for example, using me as an example, I grew up to hurt a lot of people, but there are millions of people just like us who don't hurt anybody, okay? Who don't engage in destructive behaviors, who don't become evil. And I don't consider myself evil because I'm in the midst of paying restitution and I feel terrible about this. But Trump isn't going to pay any restitution and Adolf Hitler isn't going to bring back millions of dead people. So let's be honest. This is the same personality type. This is an evil. This is what evil looks like. And I'm telling you this as an atheist. I don't believe in God and I don't believe in Satan. I think that's absurd. But I believe in good and evil. Okay, you don't need God or Satan to understand the difference between good or evil. And Donald Trump inciting a riot in which a 16-year-old girl, I'm not going to call her a woman, is killed. At 16, she didn't know her ass from a hole in the ground. She's just caught up in this thing. And it's his fault, and he should go to prison. Anyway, look, even the evil can do good things. I know there are still some of you watching me right now that are saying to yourself as you're listening to me, but he still did some good things. You're just, and now we have Democrats in charge. It's still, look, Democrats and Republicans politically, in reality, are two sides of the same coin. Okay, they're not different coins. They're the same coin. One's a little this way and one's a little that way, but they're both supporting what is in essence a fascist national government. Okay, you know, and it's driving people apart. Now, when I say, I'm not saying fascist again cheaply, like a lot of people do when they, you know, have someone they disagree with and they call them a fascist. A fascist government is a government that demands that the people swear fealty to the government before themselves and engages in a corporate warfare state where large corporations collude with the government to be in a state of perpetual war, which we have been in since the Second World War. We have been in a state of perpetual war since the Second World War. Period. End of story. You can have a million reasons why, but we are. And the question is, were these good wars and why were we in it and why did they start them? The fucking government. And it was Democrats and Republicans. There's not a dime's worth of difference. And yes, they do some good things in there, but they do a lot more evil. Evil can do good things. So you can't look at a politician and say, but he or she did this good thing. They're all evil because they pursue power. Okay, Donald Trump is merely a caricature of what goes in the hearts of all of these motherfuckers who pursue power almost above all else. I mean, we've become so numb to politics as citizens that we hardly pay notice to how much lying goes on. I mean, they look at us and they lie to our face. But folks, I have some happy news for you. What's up is down and down is up, okay? I know some of you are out there looking at, oh, fuck, a Democratic Senate. Now we're going to it's going to be runaway. The Democrats are going to go crazy spending money like motherfuckers. That could be a great thing. It could be a great thing, and it sobers me because it's going to bring the collapse on sooner, which brings on the reset sooner, which we can turn this shit around, okay? The radical becomes reasonable when the world turns to shit. And yeah, we're going to get the shit even faster. And some good things are going to come from this too. For example, pot's going to be nationally legal here in about 20 seconds. It already passed the House. It was dead on arrival when Mitch McConnell was in charge of the Senate, but it's alive and well now, and it ought to get through the Democratic Senate pretty easy. And I know some of you are saying that Kamala Harris, who was the deciding vote, was the Attorney General of California and prosecuted pot crimes. Yeah, that was then and this is now. All those Democrats are venal politicians, and a few Republicans will jump on board too. Ron Paul will vote for it, for sure. He's a libertarian. And I don't know. Some other people, it'll get a 2 or 3, maybe Josh Hawley. There'll be a few Republican votes. It's going to pass. So that's a good thing. And President Biden will sign it. In the past, he's been anti-pot, but he's much more reasonable these days. Now, moving along, and they're all just politicians. And since 64% of the American people, the last poll I looked at, were in favor of national legalization, that's going to happen. The second thing that's going to happen is buy every pot stock in sight. If you have a brain in your head, go out and buy Curaleaf, the largest over-the-counter traded pot stock. You can buy it from any broker. I'm not selling Curaleaf. I'm not sponsored by Curaleaf. I have no connection to Curaleaf. I do buy my pot at Curaleaf, BT dubs, but that's just because they're great. So anyway, that's what I would do. And the other thing that's going to come as a result of the Senate being all Democratic is, amazingly enough, they're going to spend us into, oh, we're going to get our $1,400 waste of money check. That's one good example of how they're going to spend us into the hole. You're all going to get $1,400 more on top of the $600 we all got. At least I got mine. And do with it what I did. Buy Bitcoin. When I first started recommending Bitcoin to you, I was recommending it at 9,000. Today it's at 32 to 34,000. It trades in a little narrow band right now. As I speak to you, you would have tripled your money. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to triple again at least this year. So just do yourself a favor. The world's turning to shit. People look for other safe harbors. Bitcoin is a safe harbor. Do yourself a favor. Let go of the past and buy Bitcoin. Remember, this $1,400 you're about to get on top of the $600 that you just got is found money. For most of us, we have no real purpose for it. We weren't planning for it. It's just more government bullshit spending of bullshit money. And since bullshit money is going to turn to bullshit because of inflation, the quicker you get rid of it and convert it to an asset that hedges, and you could go to gold if you want to, but Bitcoin is going to do even better. So, but either one of those is a good choice. Take your found money and buy one or the other, gold or Bitcoin. And yes, there are other cryptocurrencies, but why fuck around? Bitcoin is the strongest among them by far for lots of reasons that I'm not going to discuss today, but I did discuss Bitcoin at length in a past podcast, which you can find in the library. And you should be, by the way, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Okay. Look, guys, the government at this point cannot be reformed. Why? Let's discuss why are Trumpsters Trumpsters, okay? Why are the hardcore, 24%, this is a poll I read this morning, 24% of the American people support him blindly, okay? Absolutely believe anything he says and think he's, in many ways, not literally, but figuratively speaking, a Christ-like figure to these people, okay? They just damn near worship him. Why? Are they stupid? No, they're not. But they do resent the elite, and the elite is not the one the Democrats talk about. It's not the rich. People don't care about the rich. Why don't people care about the rich? Because they can see themselves as rich. The average person can see maybe he'll win the lottery, maybe he'll start a business, maybe a rich aunt will die. But one way or another, the average person can see themselves as rich. No, what they resent is the intellectual elite that condescends to them constantly and basically calls them stupid in all kinds of passive-aggressive. This is the real hate speech in America. There's no white privilege and there's no male hierarchy, but there sure as shit is an intellectual elite, a top group of people who consider themselves smart, who run this country. The 5,000 or so people that run the various branches of the government of the United States make up largely the intellectual elite. And if you listen to them, they talk to people like they're idiots, and people aren't idiots. They may not be intellectuals, but they aren't idiots. And they know they're never going to be intellectuals, so they cannot identify with these people. So they just fucking hate them. And that's why they back Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not going to be the last rabble-rouser, my friends. We are in a dangerous position here. We are going to have to present a new alternative in the form of anti-politism, and we're going to have to take this harder and in a different way than I thought, because this is coming on faster than I thought. Okay, now, there's a lot of opportunity here, okay? There's always opportunities. Look, think of yourself as a bird born in a cage. You and I were born into a system, into a cage. We have been subject to the whims of the federal government, Democrat or Republican, since the day we were born. And to a bird born in a cage, flying is an illness. Okay, think about that. If you were a bird born in a cage, then if you saw someone flying, you'd think of it as an illness. Okay? But you've got to let go of that cage mentality. You've got to be willing to consider new and radical ideas, because they're not radical. They're just flying. They've been there all along. Antipolitism as an idea, okay, has really, I may have discovered it, but I didn't invent it in the sense that it's self-evident. When you read A Radical Reset, you'll see that. The whole thing is self-evident, and it fixes everything. It gets rid of the intellectual elite as ruling us in this 5,000-person fascist regime that controls the money supply and the military, and it replaces it with a government of the people, by the people, for the people, that cannot be corrupted under any circumstance. It is impossible to corrupt an anti-political government, and it is impossible for a Donald Trump to ever see the daylight in office. Okay? the world will change radically. Government cannot be reformed. It must be decimated, and it must be replaced with something completely new. And what that is anti-politism. And that's where I'm going to wrap it up today. This is just, God only knows what's coming next. Okay, now look, I said it before, I'll say it again. Pick up your free copy of A Radical Reset. Okay, just do it. Go to Amazon right now, pick it up and read it. It is not War and Peace. It won't take you forever. You can do it in an afternoon or two. Just get yourself a cup of coffee, sit down, and go through it. Okay, plus it's a fairly enjoyable read, if I may so brag. And it's free to you to read. Okay, second, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast. Make sure you share it with friends. It's here, guys. We're at this is it. This is it. We're staring into the abyss. There is no knowing where this is going and what's going on and what are going to be the unforeseen consequences of what's going on. We have got to start growing this movement. Share it, talk about it, and I promise you that the next podcast and everyone after that will be like this one and better. Okay, as the movement grows and we start to realize more revenue, I'll be able to really juice this puppy up and grow this movement. We need to take control. We being the people of the United States against the government of the United States, which is fascist. Remember, fascism, and I know when I say this goes right to racism and anti-Semitism. Fascism, and I'm a Jew telling you this, is not a racist movement. That's why it's been so disguised. This is why people don't see it. They all confuse fascism with Hitler, but Mussolini brought fascism on the scene, and actually Woodrow Wilson did, years before that, and Mussolini was not an anti-Semite, never mentioned Jews or race at all. That all came about when Hitler came around, and so it got to be synonymous. It got to be associated with it. Okay, but fascism is a corporate state that demands that people subjugate themselves to the state, as all of us do in so many ways, in the increasing ways they control our thought and speech, or try to, and bring us to, it's a war state. We're in a perpetual state of war. If Hitler had won World War II, he'd still be fighting new wars and spreading the empire still. Because a fascist state, in order to economically thrive, is at a perpetual war footing with massive corporations. And I'm a free market guy, but massive corporations were never envisioned by the founders and the amount of power they bring to corrupt politics. But I don't want to keep going. I'm done. Thank you very, very much for joining me. I'll talk to you next time. In the meantime, read the books, share, subscribe. And until then, I'm just going to sign off. This is your pal, E.H. Ivins. See you later.